Testimony was really about Taylor Parker's relationship with her children and friends. And one of her former friends,
first child early, and my parents were very disappointed in me.
That I would be found guilty, and I knew from the beginning, from the beginning of my trial.
Casings found there didn't match the weapon that they're saying is the murder weapon. That's still.
Number 5, Taylor Parker. A Texas woman named Taylor Parker, convicted of destroying a pregnant woman and then taking her unborn baby, who also perished, was sentenced to her end. Under the multiple videos of her trial and sentencing, many people commented on her looks.
Been indicted on that charge at this point. Parker's bond was revoked in court today, and the attorney for 27-year-old Taylor Renee Parker pleaded not guilty on her behalf.
She seemed like a beautiful woman, but in reality, Parker seemed to be hiding a wretched monster inside. Parker had told her boyfriend and others she was pregnant, held a gender reveal party, and on October 9, 2020, said she was going to a hospital in Idabel, Oklahoma to pre-register for labor to be induced. That same morning, police in New Boston, Texas, west of Texarkana, received a 911 call from a woman who reported someone had destroyed her daughter, the affidavit said. Responding officers found Simmons, who they learned had been 34 weeks pregnant, with a large cut along her abdomen and the baby no longer in her womb.
They went through the evidence in the law and felt that they had points, and I absolutely think that she got the punishment that she deserved today.
Texas state troopers conducted a traffic stop of a car that morning and found Parker holding a baby in her lap, and the umbilical cord was connected to the infant, which appeared to be coming out of the female's pants, as if she gave birth to the child, the affidavit said. Parker and the baby were taken to the hospital in Idabel, where hospital staff determined Parker had not given birth to the child. Parker then admitted to being in a physical altercation with the victim and abducting the unborn baby from the victim's body. Authorities determined Parker caused the ends of both Simmons and her baby due to the inability to provide necessary care to the child. Number 4, Frances Elaine Newton. Frances Elaine Newton was a convicted assassin who gained national attention for her role in the slaying of her husband and 2 young children in 1987. Newton was one of only a handful of women to be fatally punished in Texas, and her case sparked debates about the use of the fatal penalty and the treatment of female offenders.
I feel guilt in the sense that if I had done something differently, that I could have said something earlier about the things that Adrian was doing, and maybe encouraged me to continue being a teenager because I was a teenager, but at the same time they helped.
Newton was born on April 8, 1963 in Houston, Texas. She grew up in a troubled home, where she was reportedly subjected to physical and emotional maltreatment by her father. Despite these challenges, Newton excelled academically and went on to attend college as a beautiful and passionate young woman. In 1984, Newton married Adrian Newton, and the couple had 2 children, a son named Alton and a daughter named Farah. However, their marriage was reportedly plagued by domestic abuse and financial problems, and in 1987, Newton was accused of slaying her husband and children.
Things that I do know, and that I know that if a jury knew, that they would have come to a different decision. I didn't know, but that one of the attorneys working on the case now told me about. It wasn't brought up in trial. And I think that the jury should have been able to hear that.
According to prosecutors, Newton had financial motives for the slayings, as she stood to collect more than $100,000 in insurance payouts. She was accused of shooting her husband and suffocating her 2 children, then staging the scene to make it look like a robbery had taken place. Newton was quickly arrested and charged with their demise. She maintained her innocence throughout the trial, but the evidence presented against her was convincing, including ballistic evidence linking her to the weapon and discrepancies in her alibi. Newton was convicted of the slayings and sentenced to her end in 1988. Her case was appealed several times over the years, but her appeals were ultimately denied, and she was fatally punished by lethal injection on September 14, 2005. The case of Frances Elaine Newton sparked intense debates about the use of the penalty, particularly in cases involving women and people of color.
He made to try to stop this execution. I'm appalled at the fact that our government was for citizens of Houston, Texas. Be the black voice. We put you there. We put you there.
Many supporters of Newton argued that she had been unfairly targeted due to her race and gender, and that the evidence against her was circumstantial at best. Despite these arguments, however, Newton's conviction and sentencing were upheld, and she became one of the only a few women to be fatally punished in Texas. Number 3. Krista Pike. Krista Pike is a convicted assassin who gained notoriety for her role in the torture and slaying of a fellow teenager in Tennessee in 1995. Pike was just 18 years old at the time of the crime, a beautiful young lady who no one expected capable of such a heinous crime. Her case had been the subject of much debate and controversy.
Acceptable, and I realize that, but I don't deserve to die for the action. I thought that if I went in there and told him that I did every single thing that happened up there, that Tadaro did not have somebody chain me up when I walk out a door or tell me when I can use the bathroom or responsibility for this anymore, and I won't, because if I'm gonna die in here, I'm gonna die for my truth, not for my...
Pike was born on March 10, 1976 in West Virginia. She grew up in a troubled home, where she was reportedly physically and emotionally maltreated by her mother. Pike was known to be rebellious and aggressive, and she dropped out of high school in her junior year. In 1995, Pike was working in a Knoxville, Tennessee fast food restaurant when she became involved with a group of teenagers, including a girl named Colleen Slemmer. According to prosecutors, Pike became jealous of Slemmer and believed that she was trying to steal her boyfriend. Along with 2 male accomplices, Pike kidnapped Slemmer and brought her to a remote location in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Once there, Pike and her accomplices reportedly tortured Slemmer for hours, piercing her with a knife and a screwdriver and using a rock to smash her skull. Pike even used a box cutter to carve her name into Slemmer's body. Eventually, the group left Slemmer to perish, and her body was discovered by hikers several days later.
Krista and Tadaro knocked her down and drug her
through absolute hell. And I can't imagine anybody going through that. And I can't imagine...
Pike and her accomplices were quickly arrested and charged with the slaying. Pike was convicted on multiple counts, including slaying, kidnapping, and conspiracy, and she was sentenced to her demise. However, her sentence was later commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole, due in part to her age at the time of the crime. During her trial, Pike showed little remorse for her actions, and her behavior in court was described as bizarre and erratic. She reportedly laughed and smiled as graphic crime scene photos were presented to the jury, and she made obscene gestures and vulgar comments throughout the proceedings. In the years since her conviction, Pike has remained in prison, where she has reportedly struggled with mental health issues. She has been the subject of numerous documentaries and true crime books, and her case has sparked debates about capital punishment and the treatment of juvenile offenders. The case of Krista Pike is a tragic reminder of the consequences of violent behavior and the importance of addressing mental health issues in young people. Number 2. Cynthia Kaufman. Cynthia Kaufman is a convicted assassin who gained national notoriety for her role in the kidnapping and slaying of 4 women in California in the 1980s. Kaufman was the girlfriend of one of the other perpetrators, and she helped plan and carry out the slayings. She was eventually caught, tried, and convicted for her crimes. Kaufman was born on September 18, 1961 in Michigan. She grew up in California, where she attended school and worked as a waitress and a dental assistant. In the early 1980s, she began dating a man named James Gregory Marlowe, who would become her accomplice in a series of brutal slayings. Kaufman was in her mid-20s when she began participating in the kidnappings and slayings. She was a beautiful and vibrant young woman, or so it seemed. Together with Marlowe and 2 other men, Kaufman kidnapped and obliterated 4 women in California in 1986 and 1987. The victims, who ranged in age from 15 to 32, were targeted because they were either prostitutes or involved in drugs. Kaufman played an active role in the slayings, participating in the kidnappings and acting as a lookout while the victims were destroyed. After the 4th slaying, Kaufman and Marlowe were finally caught by police. They were both tried and convicted for their crimes, and both were sentenced to their demise. However, Kaufman's sentence was later commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while Marlowe was fatally punished in 1997. During her trial, Kaufman showed little remorse for her actions, and her defense attorneys argued that she had been coerced by Marlowe into participating in the slayings. However, the jury was not convinced, and she was found guilty on multiple counts of kidnapping, slaying, and conspiracy. Number 1. Irma Grese. Irma Gries was a female SS guard in Nazi Germany who worked at several concentration camps during World War II. She gained notoriety for her brutality towards prisoners, and she was eventually tried and sentenced to her end for her crimes. Born on October 7, 1923, in Recken, Germany, Gries was the daughter of a dairy farmer. She was the third of 5 children and attended school until she was 15 years old. After leaving school, Gries worked as a nurse's assistant and then as a dairy farm assistant. In 1942, she joined the Women's Auxiliary of the SS and was eventually assigned to the Ravensbrück concentration camp. During her time as an SS guard, Gries was reportedly admired by some of her male colleagues for her looks. At Ravensbrück, Gries worked as a guard and was quickly promoted to the rank of SS Overseer. She was known for her sadistic behavior towards prisoners, which included beatings, shootings, and the use of attack dogs. In addition to her duties at the camps, Gries was also involved in medical experiments on prisoners. She assisted Dr. Joseph Mengele, a notorious Nazi doctor who conducted cruel and deadly experiments on prisoners, including twins and people with disabilities. Gries was eventually captured by Allied forces and was put on trial in 1945 for war crimes. She was charged with slaying, misuse, and mistreatment of prisoners and was found guilty on all counts. During her trial, witnesses testified to her brutality, including her use of attack dogs and her participation in medical experiments. She was also accused of selecting prisoners to be sent to the gas chambers. Gries was sentenced to her end, along with several other SS guards, and was fatally punished by hanging on December 13, 1945. She was just 22 years old at the time of her execution, and many people say she was among the most beautiful and innocent-looking women they had seen, something in stark contrast to the monster she truly was inside. But a beauty or a beast, there is no doubt that she participated in the brutal treatment of prisoners and was directly responsible for the ends of many innocent people. That's all for today, folks. We'll see you next time.